My name is Jessie Ellery. I am a criminal justice major in my sophomore year. I chose to analyze the lines in Picasso's Libre Apatite. This piece shows Picasso's ability to change his lines to match the different styles he drew in. The top left has very fine lines with a hint of shading to create distance. There's also no implied lines. Every corner of this piece looks intentional with his lines, as they range from thick to thin in some of the background paneling. The bottom right, with the girl laying down, is the total opposite. There's a lot of negative space between the lines. This creates the implied lines that make up the background of the lady and as well as her face. The difference between the bottom right corner and the top right is the tension behind the lines. As the bottom drawing, the lines feel freer and less structured. On the left side of the piece, there's a lot of black shading. The top left image of the woman has some more structured lines on her face. Picasso uses different line weights in the lines for her as well. The lines making up her face are light and thin, especially when creating her features, compared to her shirt and her hair, which are thick and take up a lot of space. Lastly, the print has lines that separate the inside of the handprint from the plain background. There's also very fine lines inside the handprint where lines would naturally form to make up a fingerprint. This piece of artwork relates to my major of a criminal justice because of the portrait, which can be thought of as a headshot and drawing of the handprint, which is often analyzed with the intention of finding the type of fingerprint that matches the one found in a crime scene. Overall, this piece of art balances the complex line patterns and simple lines found in Picasso's art.
Hello, my name is Artie Etienne, and I'll be describing La Barre d'Appui using the formal elements of color and light. The color is very minimal. It only consists of black and white. This can represent many things such as sadness, emptiness, or trying to find meaning in chaos. But for me, the absence of vibrant color with almost divided, dreamlike atmosphere makes the piece feel like a lost time and fading memory. The use of light in this piece is very strategic, and it's intentional. It's like very minimal too as well, but it's all over the piece. Certain areas are more shaded than others, which only creates shadow and depth, such as the handprint in the down left of the piece is very noticeable, where the focus is more drawn to the shadow and less to the light, which can represent lingering traces of someone's memory or past that's no longer with us or no longer there. I connect with this on a deeper level, and I'm sure many people might as well, such as the woman in the piece. She's looking far off. She's looking distant, which almost you can interpret that as her losing her will or faith in reality or in everything that she trusted or confided in. You can combine that with the symbolic images and the garden that's in the upper right of the piece, and it starts to represent memories that you can no longer go back to because it's so dreamlike. It's so basically it looks like as if it's a distant memory. That's what I'm trying to say. But for me, it reminds me of losing my cousin last year, along with others I've lost. It's a painful truth that life keeps going, and all we can do is appreciate what we have right now. That pain has changed me in a way, and I know it has changed others. The woman in this piece doesn't just look distant, it reflects how it feels like to be emotionally worn out, such as a burnout, and to be present but still haunted by the memories that I've been through. And these are the formal elements of this piece the group has picked. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bella Evans, and I'm currently a sophomore at FAU studying communications. And we chose to use the La Barre de l'Appui by Picasso because I feel like it felt very open and layered to each of us, to where we could all form our own interpretation and connect it to our own lives. And the formal element I will be using is space. Overall, the piece uses each individual panel to explore space in different ways. However, they kind of all work together to create like a sense of harmony or a visual conversation between the two. And I'm going to start at the top left of the piece with the portrait of the woman. This portrait is very flat and there's little to no depth. The space is very compressed, although the portrait of the woman is kind of just fitting to the edges. of the panel, making the piece appear shallow. This kind of creates an intimate or personal feeling that locks in the viewer's attention to just the facial expression of the woman. And then I'm going to go to the top right. This part of the piece is very densely packed together, leaving no room for negative space. It feels very chaotic and there's lots of overlapping lines. This kind of creates a sense of like an illusionistic feeling in the viewer. And then we're going to go to the bottom left. The handprint is very flat and seems to appear as if it's floating in space. There's nothing really anchoring it down. This use of negative space is very apparent because of the black handprint pressed against the white background. Again, this kind of feels very personal and intimate with the viewer. Lastly, the bottom right, we see a woman kind of laying her head down and there's also a scene in the background. This panel has the clearest use of linear perspective and depth because the building's in the background and it kind of feels very far away, while we have the figure dominating the foreground of the piece. The way that I would relate this piece to my life kind of ties back to the way I perceive my own identity. I feel like this piece has so many different contrasting elements and has 4 different panels coming together to create one whole piece. And I feel like I do this with the chaotic parts of my life and the peaceful parts of my life, whether it's with school and work, and then the peaceful parts of my life, which are yoga and meditation. And I kind of try to weave these together to create a sense of balance or a feeling of unity within me.
Hi, so my name's Coley Ellison. I'm currently a sophomore at FAU and I'm studying emergency management. For my element of art, I chose to do texture. That's because I think it's super versatile, where there's not one thing that it does, but there's multiple things. It can give artworks a sense of realism, it can highlight contrast, and it can especially create a sense of emotion. One thing I would say is unique with our art piece is the fact that it doesn't necessarily create a sense of emotion, but I think the use of texture actually created a lack of emotion. The reason I say that is because whenever I look at this painting, I don't feel an overwhelming sense of sadness, but I definitely don't feel any happiness either. I kind of just feel very empty and very mellow. I think with paintings that use a smooth texture, it gives it a warm feeling, kind of makes me feel happy. But with this, I get the complete opposite. It feels very dark and cold. I also noticed that another texture that's present is it's very cracked, and it makes the painting look old and it looks like it's decaying. I think that both of these things together overall just make me feel a little bit uneasy, but also just make me feel nothing. I think it's very emotionless. And I think that was done on purpose. The way that I relate this to my life is the fact that my life is very repetitive. I do the same stuff every day, and none of it really gives me a sense of emotion. None of it makes me sad, but none of it makes me happy. It's just going to school, going to work, doing homework, and repeating. I think that that's similar with this art piece, where there's 4 different sections, but they all give the same empty and emotionless vibe to the artwork.
I'm Ian Earhart. I'm a freshman at FAU. My major is exercise science. I chose the femoral element of value because it shows the contrast of light and shadow in this painting, and it shows the mood creation that Picasso made from showing that sad, quiet, melancholic vibe from the painting. Also, I think he uses depth and dimension to show the foreground and the background of the painting. Also, it can relate to my own life because it shows how to navigate the light and darknesses of life. It also shows you that you don't need to use color to express your feelings. You could also show it in many other ways, not using color. And I also think it shows moments of reflection because it shows that when we pause time and just think about stuff, we don't need to use all these fancy things to make something look good.